back to another episode of the Ironpulse podcast. Today, Kyle and I will be talking about how to prepare and get ready for your first order. And this is whether, this is not dependent on just using Shopify. You could be using basically any website, any web platform. The processes are generally the same. However, going through the UI and finding all the information, that's probably going to be different per host, per site. But we're going to be talking mainly from Shopify experience just because that's what we've used. But again, the majority of this stuff is relevant to whatever you use. So, Kyle, would you like to take it away?
Yeah, I think, whenever it comes to shipping orders, especially as a startup, it can be kind of daunting. Like I remember Cam and I, when, back a couple of years ago when had this as an idea, we always thought about, how are we going to ship the items? How are we going to calculate the weights of them? How are we going to physically ship them? Do we just bring them to a post office? Like there was a lot of unknowns, and, we were looking online and we came across a couple articles where someone was like, oh, I got back charged $400 because this was 2 pounds overweight. So, after reading that, you and I were like freaking out, like how accurate do these weights have to be? And, in the end of the day, it really, comes down to the platform that you're using. Make sure you have a good plugin and make sure everything is in order, which we'll get into. But yeah, I just remember at the start, we were looking at different softwares to try to incorporate. We were trying to figure out manual ways to ship it. We were looking at like label guns. We weren't sure how to do that. And one thing that we actually did, instead of purchasing a label printer, all we did was we had a regular piece of paper printer that would print the receipt, and then we just use that clear masking tape. Well, it's actually not masking tape because masking tape's like a tan color, but that clear tape that you would use for packaging. And you just put the label on the poly mailer and tape all sides. That's a good cheap alternative for any startup that's, looking to start shipping product.
Yeah, I mean, we've thankfully not run into too many shipping issues, but as we both know, I mean, taking stuff directly to pack mail or UPS, USPS, or wherever, FedEx, I mean, it's way more expensive than going through, for us, Shopify or ShipStation or, any other platform that you use. It depends on how frequent you ship, though, right? But yeah, having the weight of the item is definitely going to be important, and the dimensions too, I would say. For, we ship with poly mailers. Our dimensions, we say that they're generally the same. We have like a default. However, the more you pack an item, or the more you pack a bag full of items, obviously, the taller and the wider it's going to be. So I think that they care mainly about the weight of the item and whether or not like it's a super boxy item. Because obviously, if you're shipping a canoe, that's going to be way worse and way more expensive and inconvenient than shipping a shirt, right? Or like a coffee mug, for example. Anything that's fragile, maybe that adds extra, a little bit of extra caution and care to it, depending on how it's packaged and or how big and boxy it is. So, another thing with shipping, there's a bunch of different shipping districts, shipping rates, locations. Shopify, at least from our standpoint, we've come across some addresses that can't confirm locations of customers. That really isn't necessarily like up to us. I don't think they operate and update as frequently on the back end, especially if there's a new development or a new plan that just went in, like a couple months ago or a year ago or whatever the case is. They might not be as up to date with something like that. So depending on how big you are as a company, like if you have like one person and you need to confirm their location, it might just be nice to reach out to them, to the customer, and just be like, hey, just want to make sure that this is in fact your correct address. We're getting some errors on the shipping side or whatever the case is. But you just want to make sure that there's no issues there. Even at the end of the day, you didn't input the address, so it's not necessarily your fault. But depending on how many of those you get, it might be good just to check out, make sure it's accurate. So after you have the items picked out, you have the weight of the item, you have the poly mailer, you have the locations, are there any, and Kyle and I talked about this, we started doing stickers, but are there any packaging like fillers that you want to offer? You know, you could do discounts, you could do, like Kyle and I said, stickers. We've done that. I know with Chegg, Kyle, do you remember like Chegg? They used to pack so much shit when they would send their textbooks. Like they were sending like coffees and Red Bulls and Tide Pods back before kids ate them. That probably led to them eating them. Weirdos. And just a bunch of different discounts. So they would send all this stuff. You know, obviously, my opinion and my advice would make it be relevant to like your brand message, your company. You know, you could send business cards. I know Kyle and I, we've asked the leaders if they want us to put anything in there, like business cards, or I know Charlie has EVL discounts and like whatever the case is. And everybody's all gung ho about it, but then they never do it. So if any of them listen to this, guys, send us anything you want to put in there. But yeah, so check, you know, having some fillers is important too. People want to open a package, and if they get more than what they thought they were going to get, they're pretty ecstatic about it. I would say that they're usually happy. Nobody's going to complain because they got more than what they had paid for.
And something even too, you know, as simple as a note, which I think you already mentioned, but I mean, a lot of people will even shoot me a message or Cam a message, or if I see them, they'll talk about it and be like, oh, like, you know, I really appreciated the note that you put in there. It just adds a personal touch, and it's really not an expensive thing to add into an order, or heavy thing to add. It's like, you know, almost weightless, and it just kind of adds that, you know, personal touch to the order to, you know, whichever customer's getting it.
Yeah, you know, the personal touch is definitely always going to be something nice. And Kyle and I, we're going to do it for as long as we can. Other than that, you know, once you have all that stuff packed up and put together, it's really just getting the care label. You print the care label, you print the packing slip, put the packing slip on the inside, seal it up. And as far as the care label goes, I mean, you could literally just print it off of a printer, or if you have a thermal printer, that's going to be easy too. It's going to probably be easier actually to you know, just use the thermal printer and then stick it on the outside. You don't have to tape it or anything. But I would say the last thing that we do really is if it's a bigger package, or if the package is traveling overseas mainly, we add a little bit of an extra level of tape for security, just up top, because and across the address, the mailing address, because it's 9 times out of 10 going to go through a lot more, especially if it's going overseas. So just to add that extra level of security. I remember there was a package on its way to Germany, and that thing was lost for 2 months. They lost it for 2 months, and then it showed up back on my doorstep 2 months later. And then of course you get the emails, like the constant emails. We haven't found your package yet. We haven't found your package yet. They kept sending those even after it made its way back to my house.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, dude, shipping is a nightmare sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. You just take the extra steps of precaution, just making sure that everything's weighed correctly, everything is securely fastened, securely packaged, ready to go for a wild ride, whether it be, you know, across the street to your neighbor or overseas, doesn't matter. You want to make it look presentable, you know, as presentable as possible, because you know, packaging and unboxing and you know, trying on the hauls and everything, like they've become you know, a pretty general like social media post, right, when it comes to having that experience of unboxing and doing the try-ons like right out of the package. So people care a lot about the details nowadays. Other than that, Kyle, did you have anything else?
I don't think so. I think just, you know, in the end, don't overthink it. I would say if we had to narrow it down to, you know, the three most important things, it would just be making sure that you have good labels that you can easily see and scan on the outside of the packaging. Make sure that you have a good plugin for whatever website you're using, so that all the data that customers enter and whatnot is stored somewhere, so you can always reference back to it. And also just make sure that your weights are as accurate as possible for each of your products, so that whatever, you know, if you're using Shopify, for example, the weights will be collected at the end, and added up for a total so that, you don't get back charged or anything for things being under or overweight.
Yeah, definitely not a fun bill to receive, especially if it's something that you're not expecting. So, other than that, yeah, we appreciate everybody taking the time to listen. We hope that you found value in this episode. We hope that all of your shipments are going well. Hopefully, everything is where it needs to be. But thank you for taking the time to listen. You can come be a part of the Envisionation Discord. You can follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Pinterest, and TikTok at Official Ironpulse. If you prefer email, you can subscribe to the Ironpulse report by visiting shopironpulse.com. I believe we still have the 10% off coupon for everybody starting there. And remember, no matter what you do, be all in.